Shalom, amigos. Shalom, amigas, and welcome to Tom Rhodes' Life is Falling Apart, and he's a complete fucking moron. Number one, I want to apologize for not putting out an episode of my podcast for, 2 months now. And I want to thank my Patreon people that stuck with me right up front. Ashna and I are going through a divorce right now. I'll tell you more about that in a minute, but emotionally and physically, I've been broken and heartbroken, and I really had nothing to say, so I didn't feel like putting out an episode, and I really thought that the people who donate money to my podcast via Patreon, Tom Rhodes Radio, I thought everybody was going to disappear, and I fully would have understood it if people would have stopped sending money. There's one person, Rami, who's going through a lot in her life, who actually doubled the amount of money that she gave me. I was pretty shocked. And then there was only one person. There was one guy who donates $10 a month, and he lowered it to $5 a month. So anyway, my truest, most loyal people, you know who you are. The people, everybody, even the people who just give $1, thank you. And my golden Buddhas, who I send a postcard to. I just mailed you one a few days ago from Jerusalem, so you should be getting it soon. So Merry Christmas from Jerusalem, everybody. Wow. Let's start with my life falling apart. That's always entertaining. It's going to be great for comedy, all of this heartbreak. And, excuse me, I'm sucking on too many of those nicotine lozenges. But here's the deal. Ashna and I are still great friends. We still love each other very much. This is her decision. It's not mine. And I've been away too long. You know, it's funny. One of my favorite Jimi Hendrix songs is there's a red house over yonder. That's where my baby stays. And then he goes there and the key doesn't unlock the door anymore. The man stayed away too long. It's funny, you know, Ashna used to travel with me everywhere. And then she decided this year that she didn't want to travel with me anymore. She went with me to Hong Kong in April, Paris in October. It's possible as a comedian, I mean, when you just reach somebody's limit. And Ashna used to travel with me everywhere. The fact that I travel too much has killed every relationship that I've ever been in. And Ashna deserves a Congressional Medal of Honor for being with me this long. But it's something I used to say when I was younger. Like when I was single and you have a date with a girl or an appointment to meet a girl for coffee, the number one rule of a gentleman is to never leave a beautiful woman waiting. It's just, that's what douches do. And, if you have an appointment or a date with a beautiful woman, you be there on time or before. And that crossed my mind because Ashna is probably the best human being I ever met in my life, and that's why I married her. And I'm still bursting with love for the woman. And I made her wait too long. I overly booked this year, and she just lost the appetite for traveling. And then we lost a connection between us. And we could not be working this out nicer. I flew back from Israel 2 days ago, and we went to the bank, and we separated our bank accounts. I gave her half the money, and we're not going to do some ugly divorce lawyer battle. And I guess we should be lucky that we don't have a house and kids to divide everything. But, it's still painful. And people I know and are saying, it'll get better and there's brighter days ahead. And I know all that shit. But it's just the getting through right now that's the difficult part. And I'm sorry I haven't put out a podcast in 2 months. My heart has been aching, and I just I didn't have anything to say. I've been processing everything. So she, well, fuck, we'll see what's going to happen. I still love her. I wanted to stay together. And that's the thing. And that's why I think it's really courageous what Ashna has decided that, there's probably something better for each of us and that we're really just best friends. We've always just been kind of best friends. We didn't have like uh, whatever, this fucking burning passion. But, I've been countering with, well, you're supposed to marry your best friend. Isn't that what everybody says? And, the thing is I could go on this way forever. And I'm perfectly happy. I love our home, the comfortability with Ashna, and that's the thing. It's we're comfortable. I'm comfortable, and she thinks that um, there's a better life for each of us. So anyway, she's gonna move out January 1st, and uh, it's like anything. It's fucking painful, and there's a big life change happening for me at the moment. And the good news is now I have to write a whole new act. And um, also the major career accomplishment for me is that I have finished my album that I'm going to release next month, and it's 30 cities all over the world. And unfortunately, it cost me my relationship. Was it worth it? Fuck no. I'd rather not have a new album and keep my relationship. I should have done things differently. And a few of my friends said, "Oh man, I really had you pegged as a forever couple." And it's true. I had us pegged as a forever couple. I never wanted to get married because I never wanted to be divorced. And then now I'm about to be divorced. We've got the forms. We're filling them out. We've separated the money, and I tried to talk her out of it, but she's standing by her decision. And I respectfully ask everyone to give us, our space, and don't we don't need any counseling from anybody. We're working it out, and like I said, it's we still love each other, and we're doing it as nice as humanly possible. So there's your update, and there is the reason why I haven't put out a podcast in 2 months. I appreciate the messages, people reaching out to me, and the Golden Buddhas who I send a postcard to every month. They got this word like a month ago. See, if you give $20 a month to me via Patreon, you'll be the first to know when my life collapses. There's a bonus. So, anyway, I just got back from Israel. It was a once in a lifetime trip, and I emphasize once in a lifetime trip. It's why I took my mother, because Ashna didn't want to go. And it was so overwhelming to go to Israel and go to the Holy Land. And I don't know how long this podcast is going to last today. I really just wanted to send everybody a message and let you know what was happening in my life. I'm still processing what happened to me in Israel. So only because Ashna didn't want to go, I took my Jesus freak mother. And we flew in 5 days early and spent 5 days in Jerusalem before the tour started. And then when the tour started, we spent 5 days in Tel Aviv, and then we went back and we stayed 5 more days in Jerusalem. And I'm really glad that we got to go back to Jerusalem. Otherwise, I would have had a very negative opinion of the place. You think as an American going to Israel, man, they're going to love you, The United States has blindly supported Israel forever, since their inception. You think there'd be some kind of, hey, thanks, buddy. Not thanks, but, at least taxis not trying to rip you off, and people being fucking assholes. The first 5 days we spent in Jerusalem were people were fucking assholes, man. And I paid, I splurged, you know. I'm taking my Jesus freak mother. We stayed at the Samuel Herbert Hotel, this 5-star hotel. And people were really snooty and arrogant, and in the city, people stepping in front of you. It was almost like China. In China, people, you know, they kind of don't have a regard for other human life. But in China, it's because of scarcity and their history of scarcity. In Israel, it's because of religious superiority. When you are, and I found this growing up in Florida with being around super Jesus freaks. And I've met, you know, very pious Muslim people in Europe, and there's something about very religious people. They have this high and mighty attitude, and they look down on other people. And so that's kind of a shitty feeling. I hate elitism and superiority complexes, and people thinking they're better than other people in any form. But the big thing was, I got to take my mother to Jerusalem, the old city. And I don't know if heaven exists, but if it does, surely bringing your Jesus freak mother to Jerusalem will put you in the express lane in. If heaven exists, I have a golden ticket, baby. It's going to be like having global entry at the airport. And we got to go. It was really great, you know. So we just spent days walking around the old city. The Jaffa Gate, that's the main gate. There's all these gates, and that's the main gate where you enter the old city. And the thing about Jerusalem is just like anywhere, any tourist attraction, people are trying to sell you shit. I thought it was interesting in the old city. They're selling. Tourist shops, of course, they're selling crucifixes and dirt from the Holy Land, everything, you know, refrigerator magnets and everything you could imagine. But also, they sell crowns of thorns. That Jesus had to wear the crown of thorns. They sell those for $5. Like you go to Disney World in Orlando and you can get the Mickey Mouse ears. Well, in Jerusalem, you can buy yourself a crown of thorns and walk around and let your head bleed like our Lord and Savior. So tour guides are jumping on you. And the very first day we were there, we went, there was some guy, I was trying to get away from him, but he told a lot of jokes. So I ended up paying this guy like $150 to show us around. And he took us to all the Stations of Christ. There's like where the Church of the Flagellation, where Jesus was beaten, and there's the prison. Jesus spent a night in jail. You can actually see where Jesus spent the night in jail. It turned out to be worth it because, you know, and this is my biggest travel tip for Jerusalem and Israel. Like we stayed at this 5-star hotel, and it was pricey, but I wanted to show my mom the best experience. And it was a 10-minute walk from the old city. My mother's almost 80 years old, so I thought, you know, if we're walking around and she gets tired, we can go back, she can lie down, which we did, and things like that. But there was one day where we arranged a tour to go to Masada and the Dead Sea, and it cost like $100 each. And that's the funny thing about being fucking heartbroken. Then it's like you start going, well, fuck money, you know, I'm going to, you know, it's a once in a lifetime trip. But the Masada trip, you know, it's okay. It's important thing in the Bible, and all these people committed suicide when the Romans were surrounding it. And there's really a beautiful view of the Dead Sea up on top of where Masada is. And you take this cable car thing up the mountain, and my mother's afraid of heights, and it's a little harrowing. But then after that, they took us to the Dead Sea, a very touristy spot, and it was really cold and raining, and we only put our feet in it. And on these big tours, and this is why I bring this up, because you see this all over Jerusalem. And I think, if you have a Jesus freak mom or you're ever thinking about going to Jerusalem, just remember this. Most people that go to Jerusalem and Israel, they spend big money to go on these tour groups. Probably, out of fear mostly, to be protected, rightfully so. But you could be gunned down probably more so in a big group than individually, the way my mom and I did it. But you'll see groups of 50 or 100 people walking in herds, and like the guy's holding the stick with the flag on it, or like a little banner, and you got to follow your dude with the colored banner. And all those people are spending like $100 or whatever, and you spend a little bit of time at each place. So that's basically what happened when we went to Masada and the Dead Sea. It really, and always the first stop is a gift shop where they're trying to sell you minerals and lotions of shit made from the Dead Sea. All over Israel, they're trying to sell you minerals and lotions and shit from the Dead Sea. And the Dead Sea is receding and has been for many years. Maybe if they stopped scooping mud out of the fucking thing, it would stop receding. So anyway, I fully advise you against ever doing the big group thing. I think that's kind of the Jerusalem equivalent of taking a cruise ship. Nothing wrong with a cruise ship, but you're just going to get off at the port for a couple of hours and walk around and then get back on the boat. It's the safe way of traveling. So anyway, it was worth paying this guy $150 the first day because he showed us where everything is. And then the most important place of all of Christianity is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And that's where Jesus was crucified. And I'll come back. I'll tell you a story about that in a minute. We kept going back to that Church of the Holy Sepulchre. It's the most sacred place in all of Christianity. Like 5 groups when the Ottoman Empire was running Jerusalem, and it was Suleiman the Magnificent, this Arabic Muslim emperor from who led the Ottoman Empire. He's the one that built the walls around the old city. So when they were in charge, they broke up the Church of the Holy Sepulchre into 5 sections. Everything's divided in Israel. There's like the Greek Orthodox have a section, the Russian Orthodox, the Armenian Christians, the Catholic Church, and one other one, Coptic Christians. I can't remember the 5th one. So that was great to learn about where everything is, and then on the last Sunday, this was the fucking story. I'm sorry, I'm still punch drunk from the flight, and I'm still very jet lagged and everything, and there's so many. Like I said, I'm still processing everything that happened to me. So on the tour with the dude Michael, who knew all these jokes, and they were all Jewish jokes. He's all these jokes about. I forgot, one was a guy buying bras and cutting them and selling yarmulkes. The bras is whatever. They were all stupid jokes, but every joke involved a Jewish person. Hey, and speaking of yarmulkes, they sell yarmulkes in every American sports team. If you're a fan of the Cleveland Cavaliers or the University of Alabama, there's a yarmulke with your team's logo on it. And it's funny, in the Muslim quarter of the old city of Jerusalem is a University of Alabama Roll Tide store. I mean, they're selling crowns of thorns and crucifixes and, hummus spreaders and whatever, all the same shit they're selling at all the other gift shops. But it's a University of Alabama. I took pictures. There's a picture of it on my Instagram. And it's funny because whenever I'm in the southern United States and like someone in the audience starts piping off about college football rivalries, Alabama and Auburn, I've always said, hey, how do we expect the Jews and the Palestinians to work it out if Alabama and Auburn can't work it out? You guys are from the same state. Well, obviously, someone took that a step further, and people from Alabama took sides, and they're in the Muslim quarter. So there you go. The story that I'm trying to get to right now. Michael took us to the man, and people were fucking rude. I cannot. That first 5 days we spent there, whoo, they were fucking rude. So he takes us to the Wailing Wall, and there's some big fat Orthodox guy, Jewish Orthodox guy, sitting in the ticket booth eating food, and we go, oh, we want to get tickets, and that guy goes, it's sold out. It's sold out till next week, and we're like, well, when next week? Because fuck, we want to see this. It's the Western Wall, or the Wailing Wall, is the most sacred place in all of Judaism for the Jewish people. This is where it's the most controversial place on earth and the most sacred place on earth, the old city of Jerusalem. The Dome of the Rock, that's where Abraham almost sacrificed his favorite son Isaac. It's where Jesus gave the Sermon on the Mount, his greatest speech. And it's also where the Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven. And non-Muslim people can't even go into the building. Anyway, so there's just, what I realized in Jerusalem and Israel? The thing that I like the most about Los Angeles and Florida and the United States is our lack of history. People in Israel, they're pissed off about shit that happened last week, shit that happened 50 years ago, 200 years ago, 2,000 years ago. And in the United States, what do we have? Los Angeles. What's our history? Oh, Marilyn Monroe blew a guy there. James Dean got a milkshake there. Florida, Walt Disney peed in this field and decided to build an amusement park. I really appreciate our lack of history and the fact that people won't stab you to death over your religious beliefs. It's a charming little thing we have going on in the United States. So the Wailing Wall, big fat guy in the ticket booth says it's sold out. And we're like, well, fuck. And then fortunately my mom goes, well, when next week can we get tickets? And she said, we want to see the Wailing Wall. And the guy goes, oh, that's open. These tickets are for the tunnels. We don't give a fuck about the tunnels. Apparently the tunnels were sold out. So if my mom hadn't have asked, we'd have turned around and we never would have gotten to go to the Wailing Wall. And then it's separated. There's a section for men and there's a section for women. The women's side is smaller. My mom did not enjoy it because it was raining and it was totally crowded, women with umbrellas, and you couldn't get near it. And the thing, when you go to the Wailing Wall, you write a prayer on a note and then you fold it and you put it into the cracks of the Wailing Wall. It's God's crack. It's a direct email telegram to put to God. It's the direct line to God to put a little prayer on a paper and stick it in the crack. So anyway, there were all these prayers on the floor of the women's side, and my mom, that kind of bummed her out, which is interesting. So I had the most important, most significant thing that happened to me at the Wailing Wall, and this is the story. So, we have the dollar. That's our currency in the United States. In Israel, their currency is called the shekel, or shekels. How many shekels do you want from that? The shekel is 3.72 to the American dollar. So everything's in shekels. So my mom goes to the women's side, and I go to the men's side, and the men's side is way bigger, and it was raining, so there was plenty of space open to go to the wall. And I'll be honest with you, I did not know that non-Jewish people could get anywhere near the Wailing Wall. It's the most sacred place in all of Judaism. So, first of all, that amazes me, and wow, what a special privilege in life to be able to go to the Wailing Wall and say a prayer, especially where I am in my life right now. I'm lost. I don't know what the future is going to bring. It's kind of terrifying. And like I said, it's not my choice. I would prefer to stay with my wife. I love her. I would prefer to have children with her. She doesn't want to have children. What can I do? It's this great leap into the unknown. I'm not a very religious person. I really do it so my mom doesn't get upset. I mean, I believe in God, but it's like I don't believe in a man in a beard sitting on a cloud. I believe God is an energy, and that we're all in our human form. We're little droplets of water in a little skin suit, and that God is like a vibration of energy that permeates everything and all of nature, and that when we die, our spiritual drop of water returns to the spiritual ocean of the eternal vibration of energy that is what I would, for lack of a better definition, describe as God. So here I am in the most religious place in the world, and I get to go say a prayer at the Wailing Wall. So I go up to the wall, and first of all, I wrote down a note, and I guess whatever. I went up to the wall, and I put my hands on the Wailing Wall, and I put my forehead against the wall, and I prayed to God. I said, God, I'm lost in my life right now. I need direction. I need guidance. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know where my life is leading. Please, if you exist, if you are real, help me. I'm lost. And when you speak from your pure heart to God, I had this like tingling feeling, this beautiful sensation, and it was the most beautiful moment of my trip to Israel. And I kissed the Wailing Wall. And like now, I feel a little fucking mist of tears in the cracks of my eyes. And I turned around, and I'm still tingling from this beautiful, pure moment I had communicating with the great and powerful energy of the universe. And as I turned around, this old Orthodox Jewish man in a hat and a long beard comes up to me, and he points at me and he goes, "Where are you from?" And I said, "Los Angeles." He said, "Do you live in the Valley or on Beverly?" I actually live on Beverly Boulevard. He goes, "What's your father's name?" I said, "David." He goes, "Oh, King David." And he puts his hands on me, and he starts praying in Hebrew. I think he's praying. He's saying something in Hebrew, and he put his hands on me. If it wasn't a prayer, I don't know what he was doing. Then he says, he looks me in the eye, and he goes, "You're 51 years old." Holy fuck. I am 51 years old. This guy is magic. Then he says, "Are you married?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Do you have children?" I said, "No." And then he said, "Oh, you have to have children. Family is so important." And he's starting to go on and on about the importance of family and children. And I grabbed him by his arms above the bends of his elbow. And I looked him in the eye and I go, "My wife is divorcing me." And then he put his hands on me and he started saying something else really loud in Hebrew. I think he was praying harder. And then after like 30 seconds of this, he stopped praying loudly in Hebrew, and he looked me in the eye and he said, "You're going to be okay. You're going to have a child. Maybe 2. Can I have 50 shekels?" So, Now I know why it's called the Wailing Wall, because people will take advantage of you when you are at your most lowest and vulnerable place in life. So apparently there's all these people, just because there's that great French expression, never judge a priest by his clothes. Just because a man is wearing a religious outfit doesn't mean he's not a dirtball. And then two young boys asked me for money as I was leaving. Apparently, around the most sacred place in all of Judaism are people who are hanging around and asking people for money. And then this guy was acting like he had some special, visionary powers, which, Beverly Boulevard in 51, that was pretty impressive that he nailed those things. But anyway, I told that story on stage in Israel every night, and it was the most powerful moment of the show. And man, that was like the biggest laugh of the show when he said, "Can I have 50 shekels?" And then twice after the shows in Israel, two different women came up to me and said, on behalf of all of the Israeli people, I would like to apologize that happened to you. I had a similar situation. Some woman told me, I was at the wall and I had a beautiful moment praying to God, and some religious woman came up and yelled at me because I was wearing pants, and it really ruined my moment. And, I think all overly religious people are weird and strange. Not weird and strange, but I mean, just cut a motherfucker some slack. My big thing is manners. If you're, some huge religious freak, you shouldn't look down on others, and you shouldn't judge people, because everybody's religion says not to be a cunt and not to be an asshole or a twat. I rarely use the word cunt, but I met some cunts in Israel, I'll tell you that. But anyway, I told the two people after the shows in Israel, it's sweet that you're apologizing, but honestly, had that guy not done that and hit me up for money, I wouldn't have a funny story. There's no funny story in being lost in your life and giving a desperate prayer to God. That's like, that fucking happens all the time to everybody. Everybody's going through a hard time, right? Okay. Anyway, no, it's only you, Tom. Only your life is falling apart all the time. I'm always recovering from something. That seems to be my fucking life story, but maybe that's everybody's life story. Maybe we're all always recovering from something. So, all right, let me take a sip of water, and then I got some other stories for you. Oh my God, that's delicious. So, on the last Sunday, my mom and I were in Jerusalem before the tour started. So the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, we went back there. So there's two things in there. There's the spot where Jesus was crucified, which is on the upstairs level of the church. And I don't know if it's the Orthodox Greeks or the Orthodox Russians who are in charge of this area. They're these men with these long black robes, and they've got long black beards, and they got these little... That's the funny... My mom was taking pictures of it. All of the religions and all the faiths in Jerusalem, they've all got their own cute little outfit. So my mom was trying to take as many cute little religious outfits. I wouldn't say cute, but everybody's got their own little uniform for their religion. So whatever Christian Orthodox people, I think it's the Russians or the Greeks, who are in charge of looking out over the spot where Jesus was crucified. Like I told you before, there's 5 different Christian sects that are in charge of this church. Maybe for this one area, they take turns. But we went there one day. Actually, it was the last day of the trip before we flew back. So we wanted to stand in line and touch the spot once again. We did it the very first time. The funny guy with the jokes gave us the tour, where you stand in line, and then excuse me, you touch the spot where Jesus was crucified. So we wanted to touch the spot one last time. And then my mom got to go. And then as I'm about to touch the spot, mean asshole Orthodox Christian guy, he makes me wait. Got to wait 5 minutes. Well, he didn't speak very good English, but he 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes. And then each one of these 5 sects comes and they've got these incense things. They look like lanterns and they're on like these chains and they're swinging them around and it's some kind of smoky incense is coming off the thing. And one of these guys, I'm standing there right in the front because it's my turn next to touch the spot where Jesus died for our sins. He swung it really far out and it came like an inch from hitting me in the face. And these guys, it's their one moment every day and then the next sect comes, the Armenians and the Greeks, and they all, with their little different silly religious outfit, gets to swing their little incense thing, and then after that was over, they opened it up, and then I got to touch the spot, and the dude with the long black beard, really kind of douchey. And I felt like the Orthodox guys who are looking after the spot where Jesus is crucified, I felt like they were really kind of arrogant assholes. And I'm going to leave a negative Yelp review and a negative review on TripAdvisor.com. And people are going to stop going to the spot where Jesus was crucified. Because that's how... that's how strong my negative statement against these people are going to be. Whatever. It's a joke. Tom, how can you joke when your heart is broken? I know, it's a gift. And then the other amazing thing, on the last day we were there, I ran into Ari Shafir. My mom and I had a flight Tuesday night at like 11:35 p.m. from Tel Aviv to New York. And walking around the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, I ran into Ari Shafir, and so here's what I wanted to say. So the two main the mosaics in this church were beautiful of different things that happened in Jesus's life, the different of the stories of Jesus. But I explained this to. That's funny, Ashna. That's funny. Ashna wants to keep doing the podcast, everybody. She's texting me now. That's so fucking funny. I told you we're still good friends, and we're going to stay good friends, and she's going to still continue to help me. All I can do is trust. Things will work out in life. Right? Isn't that the promise? Who knows what's going to happen? My biggest fear is getting some dumb, crazy person pregnant and being stuck. Like that French film that I love, Love by Gaspar Noé. If you've never seen it, go see it. So, for my Jesus Freak family, like a lot of these shops, they're selling the same shit. But we found this one really nice shop run by these Christian guys. And one of the guys, there's so much in my head right now. Forgive me for pausing. One of the guys that worked in the shop, I told him about the foundation who I was doing the shows for. And he said, oh, that's a good thing. And he goes, I was working at a cafe on Jaffa Road, Jaffa Street. And some Palestinian extremists, this is like 10 years ago, just opened up with machine gun fire, and I got hit 5 times in the legs, and he rolled up his pant legs, and you could see 5 fucking scars from bullets in his legs. That's how serious shit is in motherfucking Jerusalem, baby. So these guys in this shop, they sold olive wood crosses and different things. That was the only shop we went into where they weren't being pushy and trying to give you the hard sell, which happens to you everywhere, like Asia and different countries when You're walking by these touristy shops and please come in, look at my shop and blah, 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 blah. These guys weren't pushy, and I bought the most beautiful crucifixes for my Jesus freak family. Everybody's getting a beautiful cross. It had mother of pearl inlay on it. They were only like $30. Jesus, they were beautiful. I should give the $35 actually. You know what? I should. Here's a commercial. These guys, they ship and sell shit online, and they were the most. And one of them actually came to my show in Jerusalem. Motherfuck, where is that card? Here we go. George Kouz store, Kouz. GeorgeKouzStore.com. GeorgeKouzStore.com. Tell him Tom Rhodes sent you, baby. So here's the thing, and it's what I was saying about the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. The two spots in there, you got the spot where Jesus was crucified, and then on the lower level is this kind of slab of a stone, which is where the apostles took Jesus off the cross and they cleaned his body. So people go there and they put like scarves on it, or the big thing that you're supposed to do is that you buy a crucifix and you put it on the slab where Jesus was crucified. So the most beautiful crosses that I got from this George Kouz store, in each corner of the crucifix, there's little round windows. So on the top one is dirt from Jerusalem, and then there's another on the window on the left stick, whatever branch, is little crumble flower pieces, and then the other one was like frankincense, and I forget. The bottom one was like gravel or some shit like that. So if you put your crucifix on the slab where Jesus was crucified for long enough, when it's charged up with the Holy Spirit, the bottom window glows like when your phone is charged. All right, some of these jokes only I think is funny. But what I did was, for my family, I bought them all these beautiful crosses. And like the Christian tradition of Christian pilgrims visiting the Holy Land, you put your crucifix cross on the slab where Jesus' body was cleaned. And then your cross becomes a holy relic. So that's what I'm giving for Christmas to all of the Jesus freaks in my family. Another big important place to visit in Jerusalem is the tomb. It's called the Garden Tomb. They built a nice garden area around it. And so this is the cave where they put Jesus's body after they cleaned it on this slab. And then they rolled a rock in front of the cave, and then Jesus was resurrected, and Jesus came back from the dead. So the interesting thing is the tomb where Jesus's body was laid is right next to the Jerusalem bus station. Seriously. There's you can't hear the bus announcements, but it's this nice garden, and there's the tomb cave, and then on the edge of the garden you can go and look out and see that is where the Jerusalem bus station is, literally right next to Jesus' tomb is the Jerusalem bus station. So I could see when Jesus came back from the dead, he came out of the cave and he went, did I miss the 3 o'clock to Haifa? Anytime you can use Haifa in a joke. So here's a significant thing that my mother never even realized. My family's a Christian family. My father was not. My father was an atheist. My mother was a Jesus freak, and it was just constant religious arguments in our home. How can you tell me some fucking Buddhist is going to hell because he never heard of Jesus? You know, it's just this constant religious argument. But my father hated overly religious people, and that's respectable. I can understand that. Um, I very few people have I seen extreme religion make them a better person. Surely it's happened, but you don't need extreme religion to be a good-hearted, moral person. But here's the point of the story, and my mother had never really knew this or had never really thought about it, but all of my brothers and I, we all have Christian names, and I am named after the apostle Thomas. And Thomas, in case you don't know the story of Thomas, when Jesus came out of the cave after Jesus was resurrected, all of his apostles were like it's the Son of God. He's come back from the dead. He's the only human being in the history of human beings to defeat death. Jesus Christ came back from the dead, ladies and gentlemen. That's quite an impressive feat. Well, the Apostle Thomas is the only one who didn't believe. He didn't believe that it was Jesus. Thomas had helped put Jesus' body in the cave. And when he came out, he was like, no, that's not Jesus. Jesus is dead in the cave. Well, when Jesus was dragging his cross, and I walked on the street, they're trying to sell you tons of shit, where Jesus dragged the cross and fell twice and was beaten by the Romans. One of the Roman guards stuck Jesus with his sword. And that's why you see on the Catholic crucifixes of Jesus, he's got a little hole on his right under his right rib cage. That's the hole where the Romans stuck him with the sword. So Jesus, the resurrected Jesus, said to Thomas, and by the way, this is where we get the expression doubting Thomas. Did you know that? There's today's knowledge nugget. The expression doubting Thomas comes from the fact that the Apostle Thomas didn't believe that it was Jesus come back from the dead until Jesus said, Thomas, it is really me. Come and stick your finger in my sword hole. And then Thomas walked over and put his finger into Jesus' sword hole. And then he believed that it was the Son of God and that Jesus had actually resurrected from the dead. So I am named after the sword hole fingerer. Isn't that charming? Yeah, doubting Thomas. I think that also explains a lot of my skepticism in life, but could just be coincidental. But my mom thought that was a pretty heavy epiphany when I pointed out to her that was Thomas was the one who didn't believe until he put his finger in the sword hole. It's a hell of a story. And all of the stories that we've been told so many times in our life come from Jerusalem. And here we are in Jerusalem. So there's a couple other stories I want to tell you. And this is on the Sunday, our last Sunday in Jerusalem. We spent the 5 days in Jerusalem before the tour started. And then my mom wanted to go to Mass at, we wanted to go to a couple Masses in the church, in churches in the old city. So you got these different quarters, the Armenian quarter, there's the Christian quarter, the Muslim quarter, and the Jewish quarter. So some Arabic Christian guy who worked at the Samuel Herbert Hotel told us to enter in the new gate, and then you walk straight down till it tees, and at some restaurant that begins with a Y, you take a left. I think that's St. Francis Street. And then there's a Catholic church on the left, and we went in there at 11 in the morning, and it was a church service in Arabic for Arabic Christians. and that was a thrill to see mass in the old city. And then we walked around the city, and we were jet lagged, sleeping with my mom for 2 weeks in the same room. Um, uh, I mean, I love my mom. I'm glad I did it, but I know that a lot of people couldn't spend 24 hours with either parent. So I think we went back and took a nap, and then at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, we heard that the mass started there at 4 o'clock. So here's the other big story from Jerusalem. So we go there, we get there like 3:30, and then these Franciscan monks are in this side chapel. Oh, I got to tell you about fake Jesus. Let me make a note of that. So we go in the side chapel. It's where we saw fake Jesus on the first day. I'll tell you about fake Jesus in a minute. So we go into the side chapel where the Franciscan monks are chanting, and then they start coming, and then they start grabbing these candles and lighting these candles. And then they're chanting at whatever holy relic is in the front part of this side chapel. And there was an older man, about 65, with a beard. And he looked at my mom and I, and he points at both of us with both of his fingers. And he moves us to the front. He points at us. And so we just moved to the front. There's about 30 Chinese tourists there, handful of other people. I'd say probably a group of about 60 or 70 people in this little, watching whatever's about to happen. We think it's a mass, but it turns out that a candle walking procession, a candlelight procession was beginning. So a dude with the beard points at us, moves us to the front, brings us a couple of candles. Now we're sitting in the front, and he lights our candles. We're standing there. We have lit candles. And then they start going to all these different stations within the church. They go up the steps to where Jesus was crucified. And then they went to the slab where they cleaned his body, and all these other different, and then they went down in the basement. So there's like all these people rushing upstairs and rushing downstairs, and I was worried that my 80-year-old mother might fall and get hurt, and I'm trying to keep my fucking flame lit, and every station, dude with the long beard points at my mom with both fingers and moves us to the front. And it was really cool, man. We were in the front section at each thing, and then the Franciscan monks are chanting this kind of like Gregorian chant at each section. And then like my mom's candle went out, the guy's candle went out, some of the Franciscan monks' candles went out, and they would light it off of my candle because I had the little program he gave me. When I walked, I would hold the program in front of my candle, and I still have it, and it's got candle wax all over it. But it was kind of cool that I've got the flame, and people are lighting their flames off of my flame. And then it was one of the highlights of our trip. And then we go out, so it's this really cool candlelight procession and the chanting, and it was really fucking cool. And it was even cooler that we're in the front front area for every station. And then when it was over, in the courtyard in front of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, we see the guy with the beard who kept moving us up to the front. And he didn't work at the church. He's wearing regular kind of clothes. And we went over to him and we thanked him. Oh, thank you. That was so nice that you did that for us. And he's asking us where we're from, and we told him, and I live in Los Angeles. My mother lives in Orlando. This is my mother, blah-de-blah-de-blah. And he tells us, he said, I live in the old city. He goes, do you know the story of David and Bathsheba? We said, of course we know the story of David and Bathsheba. He goes, well, where I live, my home looks out on the area where Bathsheba took the bath. Would you like to come to my home for coffee? Holy fuck, man. To actually go to someone's house in the old city of Jerusalem? Of course we would like to go to your house for coffee. So the sun went down every day at like 4:30 p.m., 4:38 p.m. So now it's like, it's after 6 o'clock. It's long after dark. There's a lot of little winding alleys and, pathways within the old city, you could imagine. And we go to the guy's house, and there's no way I could tell you how to get there or how to get out of there. We go into his house. It's this ancient home, the size of like a New York City one-bedroom apartment. And in the bedroom, in the windows, you could see this kind of open field area. And he said that's where the baths were, that Bathsheba had the bath. And then from there, you could see the Tower of David, where David was when he saw Bathsheba taking the bath. And apparently Bathsheba was so beautiful, King David fell in love with her, but she was married to one of his favorite generals. And King David had like hundreds of wives. He didn't need another wife. And this is the same David that killed Goliath, by the way. The story of David is a fascinating story, and he fucked up all over the place. But he still did great things. So I think it's interesting that my father and my brother are named David, and I'd like to learn more about King David, because he was a fuck up, but like really important guy. But he fell in love with Bathsheba when he saw her taking the bath, and then he sent his favorite general to a battle he knew he was going to lose, so he could get killed, so that he could have his wife Bathsheba. So the guy did some nasty shit, man. And so here we are in this guy's apartment, and we're looking out on the area where Bathsheba had the bath, and we can see the Tower of David where David saw her. And like I said, the old city of Jerusalem is where all of the stories we've heard our whole lives come from. And here I am looking out, and I can imagine Bathsheba and her beauty, and King David on the tower, and seeing her, and then, all of the events that followed from this one incident. And then we go back into the guy's living room. His wife and his son were watching a horror movie that was looked really fucked up and slasher film. They turned it off, and we met them, and we talked to them, and we're having coffee, talking to these people in their home. It was really special, man, to be in these people's home. So he tells me that his grandmother, he tells me he's an Armenian Christian, and his grandmother moved to Jerusalem in 1905 after the genocide in Armenia. The Turks, you've probably heard about this, I know you're smart people. The Turks went into Armenia and killed millions of people. I think 1.5 million and a half people. One of the worst genocides in human history. And if you live in Los Angeles, there's a lot of Armenians live there, and they have a recognition parade all over the world, so people don't forget this event. So it was really fucked up. And the Turks still don't want to recognize that this happened or admit that it was a genocide and things like that. So it was a genocide against the Armenian people in 1905. And in 1905, this guy's grandmother moves to Jerusalem into this apartment. And then his mother was born in this apartment, and he was born in this apartment. And he plans on living his whole life in this apartment, and he's going to give it to his son, who was born in that apartment. That's how ancient shit is in Jerusalem, and people living in the same dwelling for over 100 years, generations of families. So it's long after dark. We have no idea how to get out of this place. And as we talk to the guy further, he tells us, all of my neighbors are Muslim, and they've all been in my home, and I've fed them all dinner. And if the Jews were not here protecting us, they would slaughter every one of us. And I said, can you help us find our way back to the Jaffa Gate, please? It was kind of funny. We were fucking scared shitless. Oh my God. We have no idea how to fucking get out of there, man. And that's how, the fucking religious tension all over this place, man. And then he walked us back to the Jaffa Gate, and we're going up this really thin, dark alley, and there were a couple of Arabic kids sitting on a motorcycle smoking cigarettes, and they had the same look in their eye Anyway, we made it back, and it was, whew, what a relief to get the fuck out of the old city walls. But it was an interesting, funny moment. um, Thrilled to go to the guy's house, but then a chilling reminder of the tension that these people live with every day of their lives. So there's a guy named Yisrael Campbell who's an Orthodox Jewish man with the hat and the long beard. He's a comedian. He's from Philadelphia. Originally, he was born Catholic, and now he lives in Jerusalem, and he's a Orthodox Jewish guy. He's a comedian. I met him at the Edinburgh Festival in Scotland in 2014. We were at the same venue, and I made really good friends with the guy. So he invited us, my mom and I, to his home for Shabbat dinner. So Shabbat starts Friday at sundown and goes until Saturday at sundown. And very religious, observant Jewish people are not allowed to use machinery or electricity or drive a car or talk on the phone, all this kind of shit. So he invited us to his home for Shabbat dinner, and all the taxi drivers are Palestinian in Jerusalem. And we were just there for a couple of days, and we get into the guys into a taxi to go to my friend Yisrael's house. And I always say shalom amigo. I was saying that on stage in Israel. It's kind of cool. On Shabbat, Jewish people say Shabbat shalom to each other. So I didn't know the fucking taxi driver was Palestinian. We got into the taxi to go to my friend's house for Shabbat dinner, and I go, Shabbat shalom. And by the look in his eyes in the rearview mirror, I could tell he wasn't Jewish, he was Palestinian. And that was the same look in his eyes, was the same look those young guys on the motorcycle gave us when we walked by. There's some tense shit there, man. And then in the last week we were there, a lot of violence had happened. Let me just say this. Some people had written comments to me on social media about not going to Israel. I posted a picture of my mom and I on Facebook, and some guy I met once in Sydney, Australia, left a comment, you tell those Zionists to quit fucking murdering Palestinians, and bought this big fucking message. And it's like, hey man, it's not for little old Tom Rhodes to fucking solve a problem that has been unsolvable for thousands of years. I just wanted to go to Israel once in my life and bring my Jesus freak mother to Jerusalem because I knew it would be the thrill of her lifetime. And, it's really easy to have an opinion about the rest of the world when you're living in Australia and your biggest problem is a fucking kangaroo in the road. So I deleted and blocked that fucking guy. And some other people had left comments, and I can respect that, A lot of people are against Israel and pro-Palestine and a two-state system, which, of course, I think there should be a two-state system. Why can't these people have their own state? There's Palestinians who are born in Israel that have no rights, and Jewish people who have never been to Israel can move to Israel and have full citizenship. I mean, there's all kinds of fucked up things that little old comedian Tom Rhodes can't possibly solve. Once in my life, I just wanted to go there. And I'm sure you've heard me tell the story before. Many years ago when I lived in Amsterdam, there was a Palestinian girl from Barcelona, Spain. She was living in London. And I wouldn't say we dated. Our vernacular is so fucked up, She was a girl that I respected and we hung out with a lot. And I was fortunate enough to have communion with this wonderful human being. And she would only refer to Israel as Palisrael. And she now lives in Berlin. She's married, has 2 kids. She's about to get divorced. I saw her in Berlin in October, told her I was going there, and we talked about it. And I told her I was doing this show for the Kobe Foundation, which raises money for families who are victims of terrorist violence in Israel. And she said, well, does it raise money for victims of state terrorism, meaning Palestinians who have been, murdered or attacked by the Israeli state? And I told her, I said, it's a one-sided affair, this thing, and she's a good person, and we had I told her honestly, I just wanted to see it once in my life. So I understand. I'm not like a blind supporter without a fucking conscience, and I fully know the picture and the situation there. So the tour that I did, and you got to be completely clean to do this tour, which was a challenge for me. It raises money for the Kobe Foundation, and Kobe Mandel was 12 years old in 2001 when he was out exploring some caves near his house with a friend, and some Palestinian men, late teens, 20 years old something, saw these two boys and beat them to death with rocks because they were Jewish and they were Palestinian and this ancient fucking problem. So it's pretty horrific what happened to this little boy, and his parents started this Kobe Foundation that raises money. They send kids to camps, kids who have had parents murdered. They do a lot of things for Israelis who have been murdered, their families, the victims, not the other way around. And their family, the mom and dad are at the shows every night. They introduce the show, Seth and Sherry Mandel. And they're wonderful people. And talking to them, he's a rabbi. He's very funny. They're good people. And talking to them, I realize I do not have a problem in the world. These people lost a child over this ancient fucking argument. And it raises money for a good cause. And I was privileged and honored to perform in Israel. And the best show, my favorite show, was in Jerusalem. We did 2 shows in Jerusalem. The last show was the best show of the tour, and the last track of my Around the World album is going to be Jerusalem, and my mom was there. And for my mom, my Jesus freak mom, I mean, are you kidding me? Tom Rhodes from Oviedo, Florida? I got to perform in Jerusalem with my Jesus freak mother watching me. It was probably one of the most proudest moments of her life and my life. And it's one of the tracks I'm the most proud of on the album. And it was really magical to get to do this. And it was a challenge for me to work completely clean. And what was the point of the fucking story? I'm so... there was a lot of violence in the last week. 2 people were stabbed to death at the Damascus Gate. A Palestinian was killed. An Israeli soldier was killed. And then you saw a lot of soldier police presence. And then in the old city, and people, like hot Israeli girls with machine guns. The most pretty women I saw in Israel were holding machine guns. And so you see them stopping Palestinian people and frisking them all over the old city. And it was interesting because in LA or Florida or anywhere, if I saw cops stopping and frisking a black man, I would think, fucking pigs violating that guy's civil rights. Well, in Jerusalem, you think, whew, wow. It's funny. I don't know. It's kind of racism. It's hard to describe, but it was like I didn't have that same feeling of fucking pigs. I felt like, wow, good. Let's check everybody for weapons because they'll beat a child to death with rocks here, or fucking stab someone who is just not of their tribe. And that's why I say it's a once in a lifetime trip to go there. And a lot of violence had happened that last week when we were there. So I think I've pretty much said everything. Of course, I'll end this recording and think of 50 other things I wanted to say. I'm really glad I've been stopped up. And like I said, this year has broken me physically and emotionally. And next year, I'm going to take a break from the international travel. I've got Reginald D. Hunter asked me to open for his UK tour for May and June. I'm going to play beautiful theaters all over England and Ireland and Scotland. And other than that, I think I'm just going to, from now on, I think for the next few years, I'm just going to focus on London, New York, LA, and then only do road shit in the United States, except for a handful of shit that I'd really like to do. But I've sacrificed my whole life for comedy, and it's ended every relationship I've ever been in. If you support me and you love me, I love you back. And to the people that give money to my podcast who didn't fucking end it and give up on me, and that you had sympathy and understanding for the fact that I went completely silent for 2 months, I will love you for the rest of my life. And the fact that you didn't lose faith in me. And that's the thing in life, man. It's all about faith. And no matter what you go through and what horrific murders or family arguments or divorce or fucking job bullshit, annoyances of living, if you can just maintain your faith and have hope in the world, it's still a beautiful place. So the story that I wanted to end this episode on, my mother, it's funny because like a week before we went to Israel, Palestinians and Hezbollah were shooting, they shot like 500 missiles into Israel. And Israel has this, it's called an Iron Dome. This thing was invented. The inventor of it, you should look it up. It's really interesting. The guy was inspired by video games. That there's like a force field over Israel. And when missiles are coming in, it can shoot down all these missiles. And it can zap 90%. So it zapped 90% of the 500 missiles that were being shot in. And a few of them got through and people were killed, of course. But it's a pretty amazing concept that this Iron Dome protects Israel. And the guy who invented it was inspired by video games. So a week before we went to Israel, I told my mother, I thought she'd be worried. I said, Mom, did you see they're shooting hundreds of missiles into Israel? And my mom's response was, oh, honey, Israel's always been under attack. Like nothing was going to stop her from the chance to see Israel once in her life. So, I'm the man I am because of my mother, and I respect anyone who loves their mother, and I love anyone who respects their mother. So here's, aside from that moment at the Wailing Wall, the other most beautiful moment. We were staying at a hotel in Tel Aviv called Harrods. And then the oldest port in the world is called the Jaffa port. And Israelis are, in Tel Aviv, they're more modern, and you can find restaurants where they mix meat and dairy, which is a treat after being in Jerusalem for 5 days, where they don't mix meat and dairy. The beach is beautiful. They had the most beautiful sunsets in Tel Aviv on the beach. And Tel Aviv is like Miami with machine guns. That's exactly what Tel Aviv is like. And it was like a 2-hour walk from our hotel to the Jaffa port, which there's like a kind of a lighthouse building or like a mosque minaret, some kind of structure you can see. And people are working out all along the beach and surfing and kite surfing, and there's so much activity going on at the beach. So my I grew up in Oviedo, Florida, and in the neighborhood where I lived is Lake Charm. And I always said there was never a problem in the world that could not be solved without a walk around Lake Charm. So when I was 16 years old and my high school sweetheart dumped me, I was completely heartbroken. And my mother and I walked around Lake Charm a few hundred times. That's how sad and heartbroken I was over this girl dumping me in high school. And it was my mom who healed me as we walked around Lake Charm. And then 35 years later, I'm having the exact same moment with my mom walking along the Mediterranean in Israel. And my mother is healing me. And I'm heartbroken again. It's the same situation all these years later. But instead of Lake Charm, it's the Mediterranean Sea. And I had the epiphany that I think my mother is the love of my life. And that's when you say, "Aww." But it's kind of probably fucking true, man. So she's the woman who always sticks with me, and she's always there for me when I have my heart broken. So wherever you're at in the world, I hope you're glad to hear my voice again. Hopefully the dam is burst, and that I will start putting out podcasts again regularly. But I needed to take that time off because I've been fucking heartbroken, and it was a very magical healing experience to take my mother to Israel. And yeah, okay, well that's it. So I guess this is kind of the Christmas episode. Or whatever you fucking believe. Just don't stab someone to death, okay? Whatever your fucking beliefs are, just, try and let it make you a better person. Me personally, like Ashna was worried that I was going to go to Jerusalem and like have some religious conversion. Oh, fuck. I'm so glad I did fucking, oh yes, boom, the fake Jesus story. Okay, so she was worried that I was going to have some religious conversion. And I'll be honest with you, going to Israel and Jerusalem, I think made me less of a religious person. I still believe in reason and kindness and good manners and being a good-hearted person. So still, after my visit to Jerusalem and Israel, my religion is comedy and my political party is comedy. That's what I believe in. So here's the story of the fake Jesus. So you probably heard of this. It's called the Jerusalem syndrome. It happens a lot where people will come to Jerusalem and they'll have some religious transformation. And many people think they're Jesus Christ, or that they are the Virgin Mary or John the Baptist, and then they refuse to leave the Holy Land, and they take on these personas. And I remember when I first read about the Jerusalem syndrome, like 25 years ago in the New York Times, there was a funny story of the psychiatrists who treat these people with the Jerusalem syndrome, and the doctor who was interviewed for the story said one time they had two men who thought they were Jesus Christ. So he said he put both of them in a room and said, "Look, I'm going to come back in an hour, and you figure out which one is the real Messiah, and let me know when I come back." He was like fucking with him. So anyway, when we first went to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, we saw a guy, looked like a pudgy guy from Texas or somewhere with long hair. I knew he was American, and he's got a long robe and a beard. And I thought, oh look, there's, and I put pictures of the guy on Instagram. There's a guy suffering from the Jerusalem syndrome, and he had his eyes closed, and he's praying in that same side chapel where that Franciscan monk thing happened. And I have a picture of him in that side chapel. He's got his eyes closed. And then we went back to this church so many times. And why wouldn't we? It's where Jesus was crucified. There was another time where I saw him sitting in the sun. and he looked like he was praying. I took a picture of him there too. So on our last day in Jerusalem, we had one last free day to walk around, and then and shortly after this moment is when I ran into Ari Shafir and his brother. But we saw, and the church was very crowded with people. So I kept calling him fake Jesus, because that's, people who, whatever, think they're Jesus from the Jerusalem syndrome. So we see fake Jesus sitting there, and there's tons of people. And I had taken a few pictures of the guy with the zoom from a long distance. And so I went over to him. I saw some people taking pictures of him. And I thought, fuck, I'm going to walk up and get a close-up shot of this guy. And I'd love to say something to him. So I got a close-up shot of him. And then there was some woman who was leading a big tour. I think she was American, but she had her little stick with the flag on it. And a big group of like 50 religious American churchgoers who had come over and spent thousands of dollars to follow her around and let her give this tour. And so some of the people in that group were taking pictures of the guy. And then she says to him, she said, "Do you also work miracles?" Like, kind of being condescending to the guy. And of course, up until he opened his mouth, I thought he was batshit crazy. And then he pointed to the spot where Jesus was crucified, in the direction, and he said, "Only Jesus can do miracles." And it was the perfect way to shut this fucking woman up. And then, and it did shut her up. And then the most sane words I've ever heard in my life, he says to her after a pause, he said, "The true miracle is when a bad person becomes a good person." That's the truest words I've ever heard in my life. And that is the true miracle. And then I said, "Hey, brother, where are you from?" And he goes, "I'm from Detroit." And then I introduced him to my mother, and we shook his hand. And I realized he wasn't crazy. He was probably the most sane person in all of Jerusalem. And there's the perfect story to end this episode on. The true miracle is when a bad person becomes a good person. I love you all very much. Thank you for supporting me. That's the exciting thing about being a fan of Tom Rhodes, is my life could collapse at any minute. And it often does. And, well, comedy will benefit. But it's been a struggle. And, yeah, I don't know what's going to happen. But things are, the times, they are a-changing. I love you all very much. Merry Christmas. Merry whatever the fuck you believe in. And let's all try and be good people, okay? Shalom, amigos. Shalom, amigas. And long may you run. Happy holidays.
Tom Rhodes, you're a funny man. Tom Rhodes, you're an international comedian. Tom Rhodes, karate kick, baby, oh yeah. Tom Rhodes, you're a groovy dude. You go all around the world, telling jokes to all of the people. You are an international comedian. You're funny to everybody in every single country in the world. Tom Rhodes, I like you very much. I think you're talented and very wonderful. Tom Rhodes, you're the best guy in the world. I wanna be your friend. You should call me sometime. Here is my phone number, 603-644-0048. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Tom Rhodes, you're an international comedic sensation. Tom Rhodes, I like to listen to your podcast. Tom Rhodes, you're the best man to ever walk on the earth.